If you're on my email list, you'll know that last week I sent out a quick tip on visible and invisible darts. It spiked quite a bit of interest, so I decided to expand on the topic a bit with a supporting video tutorial. I'm Alexandra Morgan from In-House Patterns and In-House Pattern Studio. I teach experienced sewers and budding pattern makers how to make and adjust patterns for fit and style. Today I'm going to share some of the most common invisible dart locations and show you how you can discover their location on any pattern. Now last week I shared this image. Now in this image, you'll see two different kinds of darts represented, visible and invisible darts. Now I know you are familiar with visible darts. They are easily found and identified. But invisible darts can be a little bit more elusive because they are hidden inside the seams and the design lines throughout the garment and give the garment shape, just like visible darts that you're so familiar with. Now in the example I've shown here, you'll see that there is one invisible dart at the back yoke seam line and another at the shoulder seam line. Now let me show you how to set up your patterns in a way that will reveal even more examples of invisible darts. Okay, so just a little bit about the pattern that I'm going to be showing you. This is the Kayla sewing pattern. Now this is one of my sewing patterns which is only available if you've attended the Fitting Essentials online course. So if you're a student of that online course, you already have this pattern available to you, but you'll notice that this is very similar to many other sewing patterns. So I just thought it would be a really great way in order for you to sort of see how you can find these invisible darts on any sort of bodice sewing pattern. There are two views in this particular pattern, view A and view B. One is the vertical darts and the other has princess seams. So we're going to go through both scenarios here to help you be able to find the invisible darts on a sewing pattern that might be like this. Okay, so here are the pattern pieces, the main body pieces of the view A of the Kayla shirt. Now by all means, any shirt will be very, very similar. So you can actually follow along with this video with some pattern that you might already have that's existing. Now I do want to first of all help you understand how you must set up your pattern pieces in order to reveal the invisible darts that they might contain. What you want to know always is exactly where the grain line is of the pattern. So in most basic patterns like this, you'll find that the grain line will run parallel to center back, parallel to center front. So that is basically how this works. So even if you don't have a pattern that has all of the balance lines indicated on it, like the Kayla shirt pattern does, then by all means just use the grid line of the grain lines in order to find how you sort of should position your pattern. Now, the first thing you want to do is lay up your pattern. Start with the back because the center back is usually the easiest to find, especially if it's a straight one like this that's placed on fold. So in this case, I'm just going to kind of tape the back down to the table here. And I want to show you how important it is to lay up the rest of your pattern pieces in order to find those invisible darts. Now you do want to make sure that when you place your front pattern piece in correlation to your back, that you have the seam lines stacked wherever they might meet at their largest points. So for this particular style, it's at the hip line because that's usually the largest circumference that you have. You want to make sure that you're going to stack up the seam lines of the pattern, not the cut lines, because what you want to do is see the true volume that that particular area is giving you. So for this example, I'm going to show you the invisible dart at the side seam. So what I'm going to do is overlap my pattern piece so that the seam lines are stacked. Now the other thing you want to make sure of is that your front pattern piece is actually in alignment with your back. So what I would do here, since I have my balance line, I can use my balance line to sort of shift and make sure that the hip line of the back pattern piece is lined up with the hip line of the front pattern piece here. But if you don't have that, that's absolutely fine as well, because all you need to do is make sure that the center back and the center front are parallel to each other. So it's really just a matter of aligning them this way. Now when you see this, you're going to see that there is a dart at the side seam that becomes visible. Now we do have a visible dart, which is the bust dart and the waist dart here on the front and the back. But you can see here that the side seam actually creates a dart as well. Now we can go a step further here and even reveal exactly what this side seam dart looks like by closing out my bust dart here. So I'm going to do that for you in the next step. Now of course, when you close out a dart, the volume has to go somewhere. So I'm just going to draw a slash line that goes to the bust point here. And I'm going to open up this dart at the top just so that you see how this dart can shape itself at the side seam here. Okay, so all I've done here is created a slash line here so that I can close out this dart volume and just transfer it to another area to begin with. So you're going to see here that when I close that dart volume, going with the original dart legs there, you're going to find that when that dart is closed and transferred up to the shoulder line, that my balance line for my bust line becomes straight. And you can see here the very integral part of the side seam dart that gets created. Now this is an invisible dart because it creates shape through the side seam. Now how does this relate to fitting? Well, it has to correspond to your measurements and your shape at the side seams. So if you're finding that there's too much tightness in the waist at the side seams, you can by all means alter the shape of this side seam in order to match your body. So that's one example of an invisible dart on a bodice pattern that you'll likely find. Now I'm going to go back and put this back in place because the next thing I want to show you is that there is an invisible dart at the shoulder seam, which we did talk about quickly last week. Now, when you want to discover what the shoulder dart area is actually going to look like, and I call this the shoulder line dart, because there is a dart that's created when you put the front and the back shoulder seam together. Now, what's important here is how you place this particular pattern piece to figure out what that dart volume might be. And what you're going to do, once again, is stack up the neck points of the back and the front seam lines. And once you have that, you're going to again use your grain lines to be able to place those pattern pieces so that the grain lines are parallel to each other. Or if you've got your center back and center front mark, those will be parallel to each other. They will not be stacked, but they will be parallel to each other. So I'm just going to use my ruler here and stack that up. Now, if you can't see that point, you can always fold back the seam allowance. And I know this is really tiny, I'm working with a scaled pattern here, but you can simply fold back that seam line, stack up those points at the neck point, and then pivot until you get those parallel lines. So in other words, center front and center back will be parallel to each other, or the grain lines will be a parallel to each other. I'm going to use the grain lines here and just sort of align my back yoke piece until we find that there's a parallel point. And then I can actually just quickly just tape that to the table to make things clear. So now you can see when you look at seam line and seam line that the dart volume on the shoulder is actually going to help you fit that shoulder area a little bit more smoothly. You'll remember I have videos about shoulder angle and the degree of angle on shoulder slope, so you can always refer back to those videos as well. But here is that angle, and basically a dart is forming right there at the shoulder line. So thinking of it as a dart will help you kind of think about how the volume of the dart needs to be in order to fit that shoulder area of your body. Now there is one more that I can think of here, which I've also shown you last week, but we'll quickly go through it. There is a dart here at the back yoke area. So once again, when you want to find out if there is an invisible dart at your back yoke seam if you happen to have a back yoke. Once again, you're going to stack up your pattern pieces so that the seam lines are matching. Center back in this case is matching as well. And then what you're going to do is make sure that that center back is aligning with the existing center back, or your two grain lines are parallel to each other. Now I think I've got that. That looks visually okay to me. And again, I'm working with a scaled pattern, so basically the concept is there. Now once again, if you can't see what's happening underneath the pattern here like you can here, once again I can always just quickly fold back that seam allowance and reveal the actual seam line, which then you'll be able to see a little bit more easily. So stacking up center back lines, matching the seam lines, making sure that this center back line and the center back line of the bodice is working together. They're parallel to each other or stacked on top of each other. If you're using grain lines, they'll be parallel. If you're using the center back line, in this case, you are going to align them directly. And here's where you're going to see the dart volume, or the invisible dart, at the back yoke seam. Now in my patterns, I like to transfer the shoulder dart to this area in order to keep the fitting nice and clean in the back armhole area. Now let's quickly move on to a princess seam style. Okay, so here we have view B of the Kayla shirt, and what I've done here is laid it up with all of my grain lines parallel to each other, and I've stacked specific points of the pattern in order to be able to reveal those invisible darts. So you can see here that there is an invisible dart here at the center back, which mimics exactly the vertical dart that you'll find at the back of view A. Now you're also going to see that vertical waist dart at the front as well, because it is included in the princess seam shaping. The bust dart in a princess seam style, especially if it's at the armhole like this one, is going to be located right here. So you can actually see the size of the bust dart here at the arm side. Now, of course, if you had a different princess line and if it was going up to the shoulder, your dart volume would end up being there, your invisible dart volume. Just like view A, there is a back yoke shaping here which has an invisible dart, and view A also and view B are very, very similar in the sense that they will have exactly the same shoulder invisible dart volume. You can see here at the side seam as well, I've stacked up at the side seam line, and you can see here the shaping that you have, and you can see here there's a void or an opening here at the base of the armhole. So if you're finding that your garments are tight at the base of your armhole, in this example, you might be able to afford to put those even closer together, so adding measurement at the base of the armhole. Again, you can mimic your body shape by altering these areas of the seam. So if you look at it this way and actually analyze your pattern, hopefully you're going to see that there are opportunities to fine-tune the fit to match your body shape. Now, when you consider shaping in the seams as darts, you can use the information to help you understand how to adjust your pattern to fit you. Now, I invite you to take a closer look at your sewing patterns before you sew to discover all the hidden fit opportunities that it may contain. Now, if you are interested in the Fitting Essentials course, it will be open for enrollment next year, likely in the fall. So what you can do right now, if you want to be the first to know when enrollment opens again, you can by all means sign up to the waiting list. I'll leave a link for you below. Now next week, I'm going to share the invisible dart locations on pant patterns. Now understanding their location might just help you get a better fit on your next pair. To get you started, visit my pant fitting video series and download the scaled pant block pattern. I'll leave a link for you below or somewhere on this page. Now I'll chat with you soon. Bye for now.